Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. All right, so we made it to the third episode. Very exciting. And this is the episode for the 21st of Kislev for the leap year. And we still are not getting into the actual meat of the teachings just yet. We're still sort of in the introductory aspect of this book. But one exciting development is we have finally reached today the Alter Rebbe's own words. So in today's teaching, what we're going to be looking at is the Alter Rebbe's foreword to the book, or at least the beginning of the foreword to the book. And interestingly enough, how he titles the foreword to this book is he calls it the compiler's foreword. So if you might remember from previous episodes, the Alter Rebbe preferred to call himself a compiler as opposed to an author. He really felt strongly that what he wanted to convey to anybody who's reading this is that he didn't invent these ideas. These were not things that he came up with on his own, anything that's written in this book, but rather every single teaching that's found in this book of the Tanya is based on Torah and is based on other places. And all the Alter Rebbe did is he compiled these teachings together in a way that would be like he sort of shed light on where it says this and where it says that and different thematic things. And, he just compiled it together in a way that he was able to teach different things to people. So in this foreword, it's made up of a letter that he wrote to his followers at that time. And this letter is sort of a little bit of like a disclaimer, I guess. I know I mentioned I like giving a lot of disclaimers. So this is a little bit like maybe like, I don't know if disclaimer is the right word, but it's a little bit like an explanation that the Alter Rebbe gives as to why he is putting this book out there. Because there were some, as he'll present today, there's some possible challenges for this. And he had some reasons as to why he thought this might not be the best idea. So the reason why he actually did decide to do this was due to the fact that he had a lot of followers, and he was really pretty much a mentor to many, many different Hasidim, different followers, and his following grew over time. And people would come to him and ask him for advice on all kinds of different things, both material kind of things and also spiritual things in terms of serving God and all kinds of things like that, praying, livelihood, family life, all kinds of things. And at a certain point, just in terms of practicality, both in terms of distance and just in terms of the sheer number of followers, as well as the fact that the Alter Rebbe started to notice that there were a lot of recurring themes that were coming up over and over, the Alter Rebbe decided that it would be best, just more practically, to put these ideas into writing. So that's what we have, that's what we know of as the book of the Tanya that we're going to be learning. Nevertheless, what in the foreword that we're going to be learning today, the Alter Rebbe presents some challenges to this. And he brings up some challenges that it knows that his Hasidim might be thinking about compiling his teachings into writing. And just as a little spoiler for today, we don't actually get this resolved. So we kind of do end off today's portion with a question, but that's okay. Questions are good. Questions often make us think and make us have a deeper appreciation for different ideas. So basically, the challenges that he presents today that he says that are most likely, he puts it on the Hasidim, he puts it on his followers, that he says, you're most likely thinking this, or I know you guys are probably thinking this, are a few. But what they basically all have in common, and the running theme of the different challenges that are presented, is how is it that a book could replace a live teacher? So this is a really good question. I don't know if any of you has had the experience of having a true mentor in some discipline in your life, whether it's martial arts, for example, I don't know, maybe like a writing mentor or an art mentor or whatever it is. So very sadly, in my opinion anyways, the art of true mentorship is largely lost in our generations. And nowadays, we really mostly learn from books and the internet and Google and, Facebook and all kinds of things like that. But really this art of learning, teacher to student is lost a lot in our times. And this used to be something that was like a lot more prevalent back in the day. And so, even amongst the Hasidim of the Alter Rebbe, this was the style, the way that Torah was passed down through generations was in this mentorship kind of way. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the most recent Lubavitcher Rebbe, he really encouraged this. He encouraged every single one of his followers to have something which is called a mashpia, which is loosely translated as having a mentor. And the reason for this is because there really, really isn't anything that can replace that live relationship that you have with another human being that you see as someone you respect and that you look up to, and that can give you very personalized and individualized feedback on yourself. So that's not something that can really be replaced. And so the challenges that the Alter Rebbe brings up today in his forward have to do with this exact point, and have to do with the fact of, how is it that a book could replace a live teacher? It really, really just doesn't seem possible. And he breaks down the challenge of what this entails into a few categories. So he breaks it down into 2 general categories. And in each one of those general categories, he breaks those down further into 2 more categories. So I hope that's not too confusing, but basically category number 1 is the idea of different people having different levels of intellect and different personalities. And so when they are learning from a book, when they're learning from reading, you could have 5 people read the same article or read the same book or whatever it is, and they are going to understand that teaching in a very, very different way, depending on their intellectual capacities, depending on their personality, depending on where they are in their life at that moment. It's going to affect them in really different ways. And then the second big challenge that the Alter Rebbe brings up is in terms of the content of itself of what's being taught. So let's say if you had, 5 different people who had, really different dispositions and really different, actually, the Alter Rebbe gets into soul levels, really different types of souls. One was predisposed more towards kindness, one more towards severity, all kinds of different dispositions that people have. If you wanted to mentor these 5 people in life, the actual material that you might give them to learn might be really, it probably will be very different. So one story that might serve as like hugely inspirational for one person might do nothing for the next person, and vice versa. So people get really inspired by different things. So that was kind of like a brief overview, and then I'll kind of break that down a little bit more. So just to go back. So when we talk about the first big challenge that the Alter Rebbe brings up in terms of the different intellectual levels of the people and in terms of what they're learning. So the first is, just like I said before, basically that, you can have 5 different people, let's say, who are all learning the same body of work, and each one of them has a different IQ level, has a different personality, has a different way of learning, a different understanding of things. So they are going to be limited by this. And so, you might have this like really, really, really deep body of work, but they're only going to be understanding it to their limited capacities, versus if you had a live mentor and each one of them had their own live mentor, this wouldn't be the case, because the live mentor would know how to explain it to them in a way that was really, really fitted and suited to them, and would be able to get their feedback and really see, are they comprehending the material, to what extent, that kind of thing. And the second challenge that the Alter Rebbe brings up in this aspect is that for some people, this is even a little bit more of a severe problem, is this, for some people might not just like have like a neutral mindset, which is more or less higher or less IQ or whatever it is, but some people might actually be coming from a very confused place. And so if somebody's in a state of confusion and kind of like mixed up about their understanding of God and the world and that kind of thing, learning from a book might not, I mean, it's going to affect them in some good way. Like the Alter Rebbe says, regardless of their understanding of how much they actually take in, it's going to affect the light of this learning will bring sweetness to their eyes and healing to the soul is the way that he describes it. But yet, will it affect them in a conscious way? I mean, it's questionable, because if somebody's in a really confused state, even if they're learning something very wise, they just might not be in the best place to be able to receive it, And so these are the two aspects of the challenges, breaking down, further into what could be challenging about the fact that you have different people who are all learning this same material and how they all will come to understand it and interpret it in different ways that's limited to their minds. Okay, now the second challenge that the Alter Rebbe brings up isn't so much having to do with the various levels of intellect and understanding and personality of the different souls, but rather of the different people, but rather their souls and the different types of souls that you have. And he talks about how different souls are aroused and inspired by different things. So whether we're talking about the first category of books that he talks about is books that are based on human intellect, which, might be very wise books and everything that were written by really wise and holy people. But you might not, like if you think about your friends, and if you think about like getting a gift for different friends of yours as an inspirational present, you might know of a book that you find to be super, super inspiring, super, valuable in life. And you might think of a friend that could really, really, really benefit from that book. But you might have another friend who might not benefit from the same book because their soul, what they need to work on and what they're aroused by is just very, very different. So the question the Alter Rebbe is bringing up here is, how is it, he's writing just one work and he's putting together this one work. How is it that this one work is going to be pertinent to all souls, even though all the souls are so different? And to really emphasize how different the souls are, he brings up this blessing that the sages instituted upon seeing 600,000 Jewish souls to really emphasize the difference with all these souls, is that it's called the blessing of the Chacham Harazim, the wise of the hidden. So it's pointing at the fact that, there's a hiddenness within each one of these 600,000 souls that makes them very, very, very different from one another. And he also brings up a teaching of the Ramban, who brought up this blessing in reference to a commentary from Sifri regarding Yoshua, whom he refers to as the man who is the spirit of every man, who was able to meet the spirit of every man. So meaning to say that what made Yoshua so special was the fact that he was able to really, really see the individual spirit of every person. Once again, pointing at the fact that every individual person is extremely very, very different. So once again, it's like if you have all these souls that are so individualized, so specialized in their makeup, how could you have one work that really pertains to all of them? And then the Alter Rebbe brings up his final challenge of today, where he says, okay, well, maybe that's talking about, just like human written books, like books written by the human intellect. But what if we're talking about Torah? We know that Torah and God are one and perfect. And not only are Torah and God one, Torah, God, and the Jewish people are one. So it's really all just one thing. So you might think, okay, if we're learning a book of Musar, let's say, like a book of teachings about like morals or whatever, that's really, really based on the Torah, maybe that's pertinent to everybody. And the Alter Rebbe says, okay, yes and no, because we see that even within Torah, even within the intricacies of Gemara and Halacha, we see that the manifestation of this different kinds of souls really does manifest. And we see this very, very profoundly when we study the Gemara, and we see the different disputes and the contradictions, seeming contradictions that come up in Halacha, where Beit Shammai says this and Beis Hillel says this. And, there's different makeups of people's souls that really brought the sages to come up with very, very different interpretations of the law, and of course we know that like each one is an aspect of godliness, and ultimately there is no contradiction, but in a revealed way, it really does seem like that, and all the more so if this is regarding, something just as overt as the Jewish law or the Jewish teachings in the Gemara, when we're going to be delving into some really, really deep things here in the Tanya in terms of the makeup of the soul and your individual purpose and loving God and fearing God and, different emotions that come up, the emotional makeup of different souls is really, really, really different. Each one of us has our very, very particular and very individualized makeup of our soul. And so even if we're talking about a holy work that's based on Torah, the Alter Rebbe says it's still the same question. And it still is, how can we say that one book is going to address all of the different people's souls, seeing as how different they are? So in summary and conclusion, I know this was like a lot of details, but the basic question that the Alter Rebbe is bringing up here is, how is it that a book can replace a live mentor? The individualized attention that you can have from a mentor who really knows you, can speak to you on your level, on the level of your intellect, can circumvent any confusion you might have, can know exactly what teachings to teach you that will inspire your particular soul, and who knows you in this really deep way and knows what your individual soul needs and soul purposes are. How can we retain this? How can we possibly compare that level of individual connection a person might have with their mentor to a book and to learning from a book? So that's the question that we're left off with today. And so sorry to keep you hanging, but that's where we're at now, and to be continued tomorrow. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.